Good evening. क्या हाल चाल है सबके? I hope everyone is safe and doing good. I, Yash Tukar, founder of Crealth Research and Educare, I welcome you all to another webinar hosted by us on a Sunday evening. So I hope everyone is safe and doing good. Just a quick yes if my voice is audible to everyone, because if it's audible, just a quick yes on the chat box. Perfect. I think the voice is perfectly clear. Great. So once again, a warm welcome to everyone. As we start every webinar, we have a live learning which I give so that you also learn something and I also learn something about life. So as I shared a picture as well, before we become a good trader, a good investor, or a good father or a good mother, the most important thing that we have to understand that we have to become a good human being. So a child asked his daddy that what should I become when I grow up. So he told that the only thing where the competition is very less, because if you grow up and you try to become an engineer, a CA, or a doctor, the competition is very high. But if the first thing which you have to become is a good human being, and this is very important in terms of your life as well as markets as well, because many times what happens is if we have a bad day in our markets, we have that bad behavior towards our friends, towards our families, but we should not have that thing. Of course, anyone can have a bad day or a good day, even in terms of your market, even in terms of business. But we should always try and remain a good human being. You should always try and give back to the society, which is very important. Because if God has given you something, you should always give it back to the society, and you should never ever take your business or maybe markets behavior to your kids or to your family, because they are the ones who love you, they are the ones who care for you. So you should not have that behavior towards them. Okay. And always try to give back to the society in whichever way possible, be in terms of money, knowledge, your social work, anything, because becoming a good human being is something which is the most important thing, rather than anything else. Being a good investor, a good trader is secondary, but being a good human being is very important. So before we start the webinar, I'll just spell that we all will try to become good human beings, and we'll all will try to give back to the society. And if you agree with that, write in the chat box, I pledge. Okay. So we all will try to become good human beings, and we'll all will try to become a good successful human being, and all will try to give back to the society. If you agree with this, write I pledge in the chat box. Okay. So I think the time is done now, and I hope the life learning would help you. I am seeing a lot of I pledges in the chat box, so I'm happy everyone has taken the pledge, and they will try to become a good human being. Great. So now, without wasting much more time, I would like to welcome today's speaker with us, Mr. Joel Panikot, who does not need much introduction, but definitely I would like to introduce Sir first. So Joel sir, are you there? I'll just unmute you so that you can speak. Yes, sir. Now you can unmute yourself. Hello.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Yash. And thank you to everybody else who's been here. Yeah. Now, can you hear me? Can you just confirm
Yes, sir.
that my audio is coming
Hear you absolutely. Before we start, before you tell us your journey, I would like to introduce you first. Okay. So Mr. Joel Panikot has been a great influencer in terms of market and in terms of educating people. He's heading 3 edtech startups currently. He has always been an influencer of the markets. He has worked for last 10 to 15 years in the forex side in markets at different places, and currently he's heading CMT India, which is Chartered Market Association of Technicals, which is a very important body who is teaching technicals throughout the world, and it's a global body which is very strong. So if you are a fascinated technical analyst, you should definitely look for this degree. And of course, the Joel sir will be explaining it today. And apart from that, he has a very funny Twitter ID, that is Panikot, and I would like to I would like him to explain why that name is there and what he does on his website panikot.com. So Joel sir, it's a pleasure to have you on our platform and sharing your knowledge. I hope, of course, I know you will be sharing some great insights, some great knowledge on trading psychology, which is the topic. So before we start that, I would like to I'll give you a warm welcome to the webinar, and I'd like to you to speak on your journey till now.
Thank you so much, Yash. Such a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the effort that you are putting in to create an education property. What I'm deeply impressed is that there are a dime a dozen people who are willing to give advice about all kinds of things. But for people to want to reach out for a knowledge session on a Sunday night and take an hour and a half out shows clearly that there is a lot of initiative out there. There is a lot of willingness for knowledge as well. And that has kind of been the trajectory of my career. So I'll give you a quick set of highlights, and hopefully that will be able to justify why I have some perspective to offer to you as well. So my career started in actually turn of the millennium. My career started in the space of education, and this was so 2001 to 5. I worked in various industries. 1 to 4, sorry. In 2004, I started as a trader. I used to trade bond futures, money market futures on European and American exchanges. So primarily, derivative trading on in terms of short-term arbitrage, etc. So I always like to say this, that so I happened to stumble into trading just incidentally. I've always had a fascination for learning, and so one fine day, one of my friends was doing back then the NCFM derivative score module exam, and so I'm like, ये भी interesting लग रहा है, let us try this. Once I took the exam, I got the certificate, and because the word derivatives appeared on my CV, this firm called Transmarket Group that was hiring young traders at that time reached out to me, and the selection process was basically did not require any market knowledge back then. It just required for you to be able to solve some puzzles, think critically, have a sense of numbers, understand probability, and that was enough. And so I got that job. And after that, between 2004 and the subprime crisis, I traded day in and day out, right? So this is typically 12 to 13 hour trading days. We used to trade the European markets, then the US markets, and the day would go round and round. And we traded through very interesting times as well. So if you remember back then, for those of you who are, who have as much white hair and beard as I do at least, will remember that that was the time when the Fed was doing this scheduled quarterly increase of 25 bips on the interest rate, and as a result, the markets had this certain sense of predictability. So because the markets were somewhat because the kind of macroeconomic environment was somewhat predictable, the prices of most fixed income instruments were kind of range bound. So a lot of strategies were developed around that, and we started trading those. And in between that, the subprime crisis happened. And when the subprime, much before the subprime crisis, 2005, the London blasts happened. And when the London blasts happened, classic flight to quality, everybody ran out of equities and into fixed income. And so prices in the fixed income world zoomed. And I remember I was sitting there, fortunately for me that day, I had just closed out my last, actually fortunately and unfortunately, I had closed out most of my positions just because I thought that us din ke liye काफी हो गया trading. And I was on the way to close out my last spread. One leg I had exited out of, the other leg was left to exit. And news about the bomb blast broke in the market. And the markets went haywire, volume disappeared. We went chasing prices all the way up. And I must have lost a few £1,000s that day. But around me, a lot of people were working a lot of trades, and markets went completely out of shape. And it was very, very fascinating. As I said, fortunately, I did not bear the brunt of it, but that was my first introduction to shock and fear and terror. And not just in me, but in the entire floor that day. And we were all a bunch of young boys starting to trade and feeling like we know everything in the world, etc. And over the 4 years, and then of course the subprime crisis began. You heard the rate hike cycle ended. And so the markets changed from this kind of very predictable upward sloping yield curve to something that was very uncertain. At that time, the Fed was making announcements, trying to find this balance in interest rates. Interest rates back then in the US were about 4%, 4.5%, and it's very fascinating. At that time, we don't know what was going on. And then we started hearing noises about something happening in the subprime markets. The world of CDOs and CDSs started coming up in conversation. And suddenly markets started to bend out of shape. And we were all trained in a set of trading strategies that are typically mean reverting trades of calendar spreads, spreads, butterflies, etc. And we kept on trading our strategies. And the market kept on changing. But we kept on trading our strategies. And the market kept on changing. And then what we now know as the subprime crisis happened. And a lot of, let's just say, a lot of minds were changed. So I often like to say that while I learned a fair bit about the markets, even in those first 4 years of my trading career, I learned far more about myself. And really, that is the focus of today's session. After that, I went on to do other things in my career. I set up a corporate trading company. And as a corporate trainer as well, I used to work a lot with traders, helping them to think through their psychology, their behavior, helping them to kind of realign how they think and how can you change your mindset towards being a more profitable trader. So that was another very fascinating time. And after that, Bloomberg happened. So between 2010 and 2017, I worked at Bloomberg. I sold Bloomberg terminals to literally anyone who is willing to buy a Bloomberg terminal. That's always fun. But far more important, I got to work with a lot of industry participants across all asset classes. So you're looking at the equity buy side, sell side. So fund management houses, broking houses. I got to work with corporations, with banks, obviously, so bank treasuries, etc. And so I got this I was very privileged that way to see how a lot of different traders function across a lot of different time frames, across a lot of different markets, different geographies, different asset classes, cash, derivatives, everything. So I had this nice ringside view to the markets, which again helped me learn a lot. But my main job at that time, or at least something I felt most passionately about, was education. And so a lot of my time was spent in working not just with Bloomberg's typical corporate clients, but with business schools and universities as well. And so my interest in education kind of led me to try to sell Bloomberg terminals there, and I got to understand that ecosystem a fair bit as well. So that's what happened. Then after that, 2017, I quit Bloomberg, got into kind of non-profit social enterprise in education technology for a while, and then my role with the CMT Association happened. So that's kind of been the journey. So I'm hoping that what my journey does qualify me to teach about is how many different ways can you injure and wound yourself, and how many different hits can you take, and how can you learn to keep taking these hits and keep getting up and keep getting better every day. And I honestly, and this is something that Yash started on a very nice note and actually picked up a lot of my early talking points. Yash made a good point. It's not about being a good professional or a good a good head of business, but it's important to be a good human being. I would take it one step forward and say that if you are able to truly become a good trader, odds are you will end up becoming a good human being as well. Because for anyone who has maybe even more than 4 or 5 years of experience in the markets, you've taken a few punches. Actually, to be honest, you've taken a few punches in the past 5 to 6 months even. And this is a lot of people who have not taken many punches for 10 years before that. So one good market crisis always teaches people more life lessons than 10 years of very nice steady markets. So I'm glad then, I guess, that we are having this conversation at this time. I should actually introduce myself as Joel Pandikot, subprime survivor. But what's interesting is the lessons learned out of that. And that's really what I want to talk about. And today, through our conversation, I'm hoping that at least we can touch upon a few things that kind of deal with behavioral psychology, that deal with trading psychology, what happens in the course of a trade. And in the past, in fact, 10 odd years, 15 to 10 years, a lot of research has been happening in the space of behavioral finance as it relates, and not just behavioral finance, but behavioral sciences as a whole. So I'll try to pick up a few examples from across these and kind of talk through stories. But one of the things I find incredibly boring in this kind of a talking head format is a talking head, just one person talking. So I realize that we can't have a two-way conversation because there's a large number of people in the room. But I'd love for us to have a dialogue. So please feel free to use the chat window. Yash has been very kind enough to offer to keep throwing questions at me. Whenever if I'm on a slide and I can't see the questions, Yash, please do let me know. If I can see the questions, I'll come to them from time to time.
One thing I'd like to tell you, our audience is very, very responsive, and they keep the speaker on their toes. So they will keep bunching you questions during your presentation.
That is actually quite nice, because most of the time in this whole post-COVID world, we've not been on our toes, right? We're sitting down, and so the idea of toes is always welcome. But with that thought, let me just share my slides. Some of them are just rudimentary.
Start sharing your slides. I have one or two more questions to ask you.
Oh, please, yeah. Fine.
So basically, sir, one question which comes to my mind when I think about psychology. So you can stop the sharing, and we'll just start after the questions are over. I know everyone is excited to listen to you and your presentation. Even I'm also 100% excited. But we want to learn a little bit about you more and what you have been doing currently. So the first question which I had is, how is the difference in life which you had that time in Bloomberg, maybe when you were working as a trader, and right now when you're doing a lot of education stuff, a lot of social work? So just tell us the difference, because a lot of people have that passion that no, one day I want to leave my job and everything, and I want to do something for the society and go for the social work, or maybe something which I'm passionate about. Because a lot of people, I'm sure in the audience will be there who are like who are fed up with the job and like the same right? So I want you to just like explain the audience that same thing.
Certainly, I'll be happy to. So one of the things that like Yash mentioned, right now I'm running the India operations for the CMT Association. CMT Association is a non-profit entity that's based out of New York, and it is primarily in the space of continuing education. Continuing education being the education of professionals who are in their careers, have begun their careers, and then want to learn and enhance their skills more. Now, in India, funnily enough, we have this sense of what I'd like to call a monolithic ecosystem of education, where we try to finish as much learning as we can as early as possible, and then move into our careers. So we see in India a lot of very young people also doing MBAs, also doing CFAs, CMTs, KAYAs, all the other qualifications. By intention, this was designed for a more senior audience to help them upskill themselves. But then, of course, ज्ञान बढ़ता है तो समेट लो. So with the CMT Association, what we're seeing in India is that there is a tremendous interest, and especially now since the markets have seen this crisis, there's a tremendous interest in understanding how to navigate the markets. The government, the regulators have been making a lot of effort in terms of getting people familiar with the markets. But like you're hearing of the trend of Robinhood traders, people entering the markets from a retail kind of space and mindset, often without the understanding of the kind of risks that they are getting into. That's an area that we are quite kind of interested in. So with my hat on as the CMT Association, what I typically do is we engage with the ecosystem across a few what we call strategic pillars. We work with regulators to help them understand the importance of technical analysis as a body of knowledge for the end investors, and definitely for investment professionals. So anyone who's offering a service of investment advice to clients, to people who are investing money. My favorite example is my parents, wonderful people, very smart people, retired or more than a decade ago, both of them, and they've been sitting around, and when smart minds have nothing to do, they often take to finances. I'm trading karenge. And so then also they are very kind and trusting people, which is how they damaged me so much. So what I'm looking to do is to work with regulators to also help people like my parents when they meet with market advisors to understand that not everybody has the same amount of knowledge, and therefore making sure that your market advisor is not just incentivized by a sales target, but also has the ethical framework to make sure that they are giving you the right advice and the knowledge to back that ethical framework. These things are very important, right? So that's something that I feel is very crucial. So we're working with regulators on that. Then the other thing is, as the adoption of the body of knowledge of technical analysis grows, it's important also that all the people who are learning technical analysis find jobs, right? So what we also do a fair bit is engage with employers, help them to understand why technical analysis is of value to organizations. And there's been this ancient debate about fundamentals or technicals. I am strictly against that debate. Right? It is the wrongest debate in the universe. I think the debate should be how much more can you enhance whatever knowledge base you have with the ability to understand and react to market psychology, which is technical analysis, right? So I see technical analysis as this layer of knowledge that should sit on top of everything you've learned for any person, whether they're a professional or a retail investor who is engaging with the markets directly, meaning analyzing the markets, trading, entering, exiting positions, or advising on that, or if you are engaging with clients and have to talk to them meaningfully about the markets, I feel that this knowledge of technical analysis should be, right? And I think that's something that we take very seriously. So I'll just finish off this little piece of what we are doing. Regulators, employers, academia, obviously, because if employers are going to create jobs, academia will create students to fill in those jobs. So we're trying to ensure that business schools, universities also understand the body of technical analysis. And if they are preparing students for the markets, technical analysis becomes a part of that knowledge base. And then, of course, the media, because like I like to joke, the entry barrier to call yourself a technical analyst can be quite low. Just because I see a Head and Shoulders, I don't become a technical analyst. But then if that is how I become a technical analyst and then I go on television and then people like my parents watch those television shows and take investment advice, that is a bit of a risk. So the more media, our journalist fraternity is able to understand what technical analysis is, the better they will be to be equipped to also engage with market professionals and have that meaningful conversation. And then, of course, the member universe of the CMD Association. I'm very committed to helping them enhance their career opportunities, their personal visibility and brand opportunities, knowledge, etc. So that's really what the association has been doing, right? That's kind of my role here. The other question, Yash, about the larger area of social service, I don't feel that needs to wait for the end of anyone's career. I think, and there is also this perception that I have to first earn all my money and then I can go and work in the social sector. Nowadays, because of corporate social responsibility, there is a fair amount of funding in the social sector as well. So for those of you, once again, please don't tell your employers that I said this, but for those of you who want to make a break out of the corporate world and get into the world of social enterprise, so these are for-profit social organizations or non-profit organizations, there are still career opportunities if you really feel strongly about it. But I would also say, no matter what your current role is, you can still engage with society around you. And maybe doing that while you are working will open your eyes to where you might be best fit. Just because you are let's say, even if you are a trader today, that does not mean that let's say, social organizations don't need treasury management services or an understanding of the markets. As organizations grow, even they need this knowledge. And so your skill set will be available and applicable to them as well. If you are, let's say, a hobbyist trader and are still looking at working some other jobs, you will always have a series of skills that can be relevant in the social sector. So by all means, please don't wait till your retirement to engage with the world around you. There's a lot of opportunity right now, right?
Great. I think some great insights given. I completely agree with you, sir, that you don't have to wait till the end of your journey in terms of your job or your business. You can even start today, and there are a lot of opportunities available in this arena. So before we start, one last question which I had in my mind, which I feel it's a very, very important question for especially the retail traders. So what is the amount of importance that a trader or investor should give on psychology and emotional control in terms of their total, if we consider 100% in terms of research, psychology, knowledge, etc., what percentage should one give importance in terms of psychology and emotional control? Because a lot of people know that is important, but they don't give it and they underrate it. And that is one of the major reasons they lose money in the markets, which I feel. So it's a very important thing that you make us through that through that division, that how much importance should we give to psychology and emotional control.
I would honestly rate it first. Because for all the knowledge in the world, the human weaknesses or the human biases that we carry within us determine what we do with the knowledge that we have, right? So you might have a lot of knowledge, whether it's from the perspective of fundamental analysis, whether it is technical analysis even. You might have a lot of knowledge, you might have done a lot of research, but if you aren't able to stick to your discipline by keeping a sense of objectivity about what you are trading, no matter what instrument you are trading, what asset class you are trading, the markets in the end are a collection of a lot of human beings behaving in a certain way. And there is never a situation where you will find 100% predictability in the markets. So controlling your emotions and managing yourself is probably the most important skill set, right?
Absolutely.
Much after that comes, or maybe not much after that. If I were to kind of split the pie, I would argue if you these three elements you mentioned. So control on your emotions and your psychology, knowledge, and then research. I would say in this order: 1, 2, and 3. So control on your psychology, I would say 45 to 50% of the pie is that. And then I'd put knowledge and research as well, which is not to say they're not important. But without that fundamental basis of controlling your psychology and managing your risk, everything else will follow.
Absolutely, sir. I totally agree with this. So now, without much more delay, I would request Joel sir to start with his presentation on trading psychology and emotional control, as well as education opportunities available in India as well as globally. So stay till the last. It would be some great learnings in terms of psychology, in terms of emotional control, which is very, very important for us. And that is one of the major reasons why most of the retail traders lose money in the markets, because they don't have the right psychology, right emotional control, and they don't give importance to this, which is as sir told, it's 50% of the pie, which is very important. So sir, all over to you. The floor is all yours. And or those who want to ask any questions, you can drop it in the chat box, and I'll keep interacting with Joel sir.
Thanks, Yash. I think there is one question already from Vivek. I'll take this quickly before we jump into it, which is, and Vivek, it's one of those questions of the ages, especially in India, is what is your take? I think everyone can see the question, so I'll just come to the answer. So to study and vomit, this problem of this 35 or 50% passing marks means that you are given a license to leave out 65 or 50% of your knowledge. And that, I like this old saying I had heard, that life is the best teacher because it gives you the test and then gives you the lesson. So I think it's important, and at least from the perspective of, actually it's universally applicable, whether it's life or trading, you will keep learning the lessons over and over again till you actually have crossed that part of the journey. So I think life and trading demand 100% of whatever body of knowledge, and most importantly, having knowledge of self. But if you do not learn that, you will keep learning the same lessons over and over again. Some don't learn; they eventually fall out of the markets. Those who do learn it go on to have tremendous careers in the world of trading, and that's what I wish for everyone on this call as well. Right?
True.
So with that, I'll share my deck. I hope that answers your question, Vivek. I mean, of all people, I think you don't need additional explanation on what this is all about. Right, so I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Great. So I think we've set a lot of context, and that's kind of helped us from the perspective of our call, of the call today. I also want to be respectful of time and not stretch too much beyond time. So I'll move a bit quickly, but if you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask. There is one slide at which I want to stop and have a large conversation, but then the rest we can kind of move fairly quickly. This is the agenda, pretty straightforward. What can go wrong? How can we fix it? What is the path further? So this is for retail traders and for professionals further. And then I'll talk about the India Summit as well, for which I'd love all of you to come. But moving on. Now here, I'd actually like to flip it back to the audience, and I want to ask everyone, if you could quickly on the screen drop a little note about yourselves, and so that I can understand you a little better. If you can tell me one. So I will go through this quickly, right? But if you could just quickly drop answers to these questions. First one, how many years have you spent as a trader? One, Padman, one, Gulshan, Dhwani has been trading for 10 years, wonderful. Trump has been trading for 2 years. Yes, but I can see a lot of young traders as well here. I guess the old folks have learned all the lessons that are there to be learned. But wonderful. Vivek has been obviously at this for a while. Delvin, 20 years. Delvin, you and I have chatted as well. Nice to see you here also. Saurabh, 0 years, but investing carefully for a longer period of time. I'd also like to clarify this. I don't see a difference between trading and investing, unless you call investing what you do when the trade does not work. But even as long as it's buying and selling, to my mind, it's trading. And if you want to call it investing, I'd call it investing for a short term, for a short period or a long period. But we do have a lot of young traders here, so that's okay. Thank you for giving me some context. What do you all trade? Equities, debt, FX, commodities. What asset classes do you work with? Cash, equity, and FNO. So mostly equities, I'm guessing. Commodities, Gulshan, interesting. Okay, a lot of commodities. And FNO, I'm assuming when you say FNO, so I call them derivatives as a sub asset class within equities. Equity, cash, interesting. Nice. Futures and commodities. Does this matter from the perspective of our conversation? No, but it's just for me to get a sense. So I'm guessing that a lot of folks are. Dinesh obviously does everything. Agar debt ho pata, retail market mein to wo bhi kar leta hai. But wonderful. Time frames. So short term, medium term, long term. So short term, day traders, a bunch of Mayank is a day trader. Vishwas, Sarvar, short term, a lot of short term folks. Vivek does swing. Sumit, all kinds of positions. Positional, Harshit, I would still, again, I see all of them as positional, but short, your time frame. Delivery, short term, interesting, great stuff. And my last question to you is your opinion on trading from the perspective of what is the one skill you think you need to be a great trader? We've already said a lot of context, so timing is a good one. Discipline, timing, emotional balance, mindset, mental strength, discipline, risk management. Nice. Aditya, nice to see you also. Strict stop loss, very, very important. The word strict, I'll touch on the word strict. Money, the 3 M's, method, money, and managing yourself. Satvachan. Common sense. If only that was common, right? The problem is, I think we keep learning the same lessons over and over again. Risk management for sure. So good. I think by this benchmark, Yash, I think my session is easily the most important of them all. But of course, a lot of what I say, what I want to share today, as I said,
very important.
My limited experience.
Variety of answers.
That's true. The funny thing about my session is kind of like in the movie Matrix, Morpheus says to Neo, I can only show you the door, you have to walk through it. And I'm not even saying I have walked through that door. I've learned these lessons over and over again. And I don't know that if I get back to trading actively today, I will be able to stick with my lessons. So that's really where I want to talk about a few human fallibilities. And that's kind of where this conversation aims to go. So we'll talk about this emotional journey. And there's been a lot of research that's been happening in the space of, like I said, behavior. And this kind of flies entirely in the face of what's been going on with, with the classic efficient market hypothesis. The old assumptions of markets being completely rational, completely transparent. We are now economics and the idea of the economic agent has become the basis of so much theory over the past so many generations that we forget that there is no such thing as a perfectly rational human being. And now recent work by Amos Tversky, Daniel Kahneman, Daniel Pink, Dan Ariely, all talk about how human beings are fundamentally irrational, right? And so what I want to talk about in our conversation today is how are they irrational and how irrational can they get? So what I'd love for us to do in this conversation is for me to hear from you, so each time I'll talk about various cognitive biases, and that's really the bulk of my conversation today. The slide after this is where we will stop for a while. But this is our journey, right? And I can't think of a single trader who does not identify with this. This is the most common meme, I think, on the internet for within the trader community. And everybody always talks about, okay, you enter with a certain amount of optimism, you get excited as the trade goes in your favor, you get super thrilled. Then at some point, everybody has believed that they are Superman. And that is often our biggest downfall. And then we wait thinking that because our analysis is so supreme and so perfect and we are such supermen, the market will go wherever it wants, but it will go exactly where I tell it to go when it is time for it to go there. And then the market goes against us. And then we start feeling anxious. We start saying, Arey, nahi, nahi, ye aise hi hota. And we will start inventing reasons for this. So, like you mentioned, complacency takes over. Complacency and that combination of kind of complacency and arrogance and overconfidence teaches us a lot of life lessons. I love that always. And then we go from fear to denial to desperation to then people go absolutely nuts at a point and then kuch bhi nahi ho sakta. You will find a lot of people, again, please, for those of you who call yourselves investors, I don't mean offense, but often a lot of people go from being traders to being investors, saying, "Ha, abhi main investor ho gaya hu, and I will hold on to this position till it comes back." Now, the rational human being, the economic agent of all the Richard Thaler has a very nice book that you must read. I'll maybe send you some book suggestions, etc. later as well. Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman, Richard Thaler's book. I forget the name right now, but I'll share that with you. Wonderful books to read about these ideas. This journey that everyone goes through. And it seems to us that we just don't learn our lessons, or at least we don't learn it quickly enough. So why is that, and why does that happen is really what I want to spend some time talking about, right? So with that in mind, the bulk of this conversation, as I said, intends to center around these 10 cognitive biases. And here is where I want to kind of spend some time. And I would also love for everyone to just share their thoughts on, just a moment, please. Is my screen, my screen has stopped sharing, is it?
Yes, sir, it's stopped.
Sorry about that. Share back to sharing again, and yeah. So you're able to see my cognitive biases slide now?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So with that in mind, let's have a quick chat around each of these biases. So, and I put all of them in one place because, let's say, I guess we are humans and all of these things are happening in our mind at the same time. So as I read through, as I kind of talk through what each of these biases are, I would love for you also to think about, has this happened to you? And that's kind of where the solution to this also lies when we think about this. So first one is the overconfidence bias. That is kind of the extreme top of our chart. Main the Superman, you know, and you develop, and this is another very popular thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which if you get a chance, please do read up on. The Dunning-Kruger effect basically says that our let's say perception of ourselves is not linear with the growth of our knowledge. Our perception of ourselves, when we have a little knowledge, suddenly increases for us to think that we are extremely smart, and then from there on it suddenly crashes once we learn a few hard lessons, and then slowly it builds itself back up again. Please do read up on this as well. But essentially what the overconfidence bias is kind of a misplaced sense of belief in your skill or your talent. And this happens a lot within the capital markets. All of you will have realized that at some point in time. And there is one more kind of, one way that it happens is we often feel that because we came up with a certain conclusion, let's say our analysis said that TCS is a buy. And because we decided it's a buy, we will tend to believe, हाँ मैंने decide किया मेरा analysis है, therefore it's a buy, no matter what the market is actually showing us. And that is something that that we learn lessons about much later. So again, please do feel free to share your experiences if this has happened to you as well. This happened to me significantly, and I'll talk to you about some very interesting disasters that I've had, things I've done to myself in my trading career. We'll come to that in a bit. The second is self-serving bias. Now, this is the other thing, and this also happens. It's like situations where when something goes right, it is mirror analysis, and therefore main top. And when something goes wrong, it's like this was an unlucky reason why this happened, or luck chala nahi, ya markets behaved not according to my plan on the day. So we always we tend to biased to be favorable to ourselves. And if our analysis works, we give ourselves more credit than necessary. But if our analysis does not work, we do not give ourselves as much blame. But we tend to say, this happened because of other reasons. We kind of are a lot more generous with ourselves. Herd mentality. This is a dangerous one. I mean, especially in the age of social media, in the age of what is now being called social trading as well, where a few influencers, once again, I'm not questioning the ability of the folks who are putting out their analysis. But just because other people have analyzed something, it is not our own analysis. And therefore, we will not be in a position to also see what are the nuances of whatever it is. And so the reason I'm being very vague about analysis is I'm not differentiating here between fundamental analysis, technical analysis, a quant-based model, etc. I'm just saying that just because someone who we think of as an influencer is doing, we do it. Sometimes it's worse. If 2 or 3 people are misguided, that alone, and so if 2 or 3 friends around me have heard some rumor and have decided that TCS is today a buy, I will, just because I heard them do it, want to do it also, thinking इन्होंने कुछ सोचा ही होगा, and therefore there must be some logic in it. So that is something always to be mindful about, right? This also has to do with emotion as well, you know. So when suddenly there is a panic in the market and everybody is selling, and people, how many times has it happened to us that we enter a position, it goes against us, and then the moment we exit the position when it keeps on grinding away against us, not worrying about stops, etc. And then finally, when it reaches a point where it, we can't take it anymore, we exit, and then the market goes back in our favor. And then we blame the markets instead of blaming ourselves. Loss aversion is another one. And there is a lot of research around this fact that a lot of people would be, let's say, we are lesser willing to lose 2,000 rupees versus gain 3,000 rupees. And that again is a very common trait of human behavior, that if we think that something belongs to us, there is a sense of false ownership that develops, as a result of which we might sometimes cut our losses too early, but not let our profits ride enough. That is a loss aversion bias. A framing cognitive bias. Here, this is another interesting one. This always, I feel, is the secret weapon of a salesperson, is how you tell the story. And this is very interesting couple of presentations I've been, where a few fundamental investors have spoken at length about the Tesla stock, for instance. And Tesla is very interesting because you find people talking equally passionately from both sides of the fundamental story of the stock. Why should Tesla be rising and rising and rising like it is these days? And why does it not make sense at all? And depending on whom you listen to, and these are all very intelligent market observers, you can get convinced just because of who is saying it and how they tell the story. So the same facts that everybody is seeing, the same let's say balance sheet numbers, the same news that you're seeing in the market, if framed by 2 different people of 2 different mindsets, can lead to 2 different conclusions in the mind of the common investor. And therefore, depending on how the opportunity is presented, and this is something that happens to a lot of, especially retail, lesser experienced investors who are looking at others for guidance, just the way the information is presented can impact how we think about it. Narrative fallacy. Narrative fallacy is kind of the story of an idea, any idea, and whether you want to invest in this idea or not. This we saw. So this is back in my kind of between 2017 2018. I was CEO of like I mentioned, a social enterprise, right? And one of the things that we did was we built a funding platform for teachers. So essentially, it was kind of, think of it like your Kickstarter or Keto, etc. But to sell, to basically raise funds for teachers to get whatever resources they require in their classes. So teacherclass.org, if you ever get a chance, do take a look. Now, what's interesting was, as we were preparing the kind of marketing for teacherclass.org, right, we put together a lot of content where we talked about, there are X number of schools in India, and then and in those schools there are Y number, and the number goes in lakhs and crores, right? There are X crores of teachers in India, and if these many citizens in India, so say the top 1%, which is about 1 crore Indians, contributed even 1,000 rupees, that would solve the problems of these many children and these many teachers. And so we created a very logical, reasonable, statistics-driven marketing campaign. And we put it out there on social, and we took it to company CSRs, and we presented this with a lot of passion and all that. And nothing happened out of it, because these were all broad statistics. Then we picked a story of this particular teacher, let's call him Sunil for now, in this very small rural school in Lucknow, who had these 15 students for whom he wanted to do something special. And we told a little story about how Sunil spends his day and what he does, and the names of his 15 children and what they like and what they want to do. And therefore, would you want to donate to Sunil or teachers like him? And that campaign was a massive hit. Why? Nothing changed in the facts, but the way the story was told, and the story that kind of we get involved with and we relate to more, is something that becomes more and more common within the way we think as well. That's something that happens a lot, and so that is called the narrative fallacy. The anchoring bias is another interesting one. A lot of people used to so when I sold Bloomberg terminals, right? We have a bunch of Bloomberg folks as well on the call right now. But when I sold Bloomberg terminals, often people would say the Bloomberg terminals are on average about $2,000 some dollars per month. So a lot of people would say, bahut mehenga hai. And some of us as the Bloomberg salespeople would say, "Arey, par usme you get this and you get that and you get falan, you get egana." And they will say, "Nahi, but mujhe ye sab nahi chahiye. I just want the prices of so and so, or I want this one tool. Why are you giving me all of this?" So for them, it was that for $2,000, you give me 2,000 tools, of which I will use only 2. And then there were some salespeople who would say, "If you invest these $2,000, I can save you $100,000 over the course of a year." The same product, but depending on where you anchor its value perception. This also you will see in stores where you often see a discounted product and you see a product at full price, or you will see 2 products put side by side to each other. An interesting one. Apple came out recently with these wheels to attach to the bottom of this computer towers, those CPU towers. The wheels were priced at $600 for a set. And a lot of people are like, "Hey, this is ridiculous. How can you price wheels at $600 per set?" Then they came up with cheaper wheels, I think, that was priced at $450 per set. And people are like, wheels for $450 is a lot more affordable. Not realizing that you can actually find wheels for your computer tower at even $50. Anchoring and setting what you think must be the value often makes a very big difference to the way we take decisions. Then you have confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is it's actually related in many ways to these workshops I used to do for traders back in between 2008, 9, and 10, where we used to talk about how to rewire your brain. So think of it this way, and this we'll go a step a little into kind of the way the brain is structured, right? As you know, impulses pass in the brain through what is called neurons, different brain cells. And every time you learn a new skill or experience or habit or even emotion, one neuron connects to another, and say electricity flows from one part of the brain to the other, and that is how a thought happens or an emotion happens. So anything that acts within your brain is the result of electrical impulses going from one place to another. Now the brain is a highly efficient machine. What it tries to do constantly is tries to use lesser and lesser and lesser energy. So if you are going down a kachi sadak, you will have, it takes a lot of energy to say if you are cycling down a kacha road, it takes a lot of energy to kind of weave your way through the road. But if you widen the road a little more and pave it a little more, you will move on it much faster. So the brain does that. And the more you repeat a certain set of thoughts, or the more you think of something, the likelier you are that the connections between these neurons become stronger and stronger. And as a result, what happens is then those thoughts become habit. And those habits become actions. And those actions then lead to who you become as a person as a whole. Now, when you look at it, there are also some very interesting studies on how when you are geared to think a certain way, the world that you see is in line with what you think. Now, I used to do this little exercise where when wristwatches were a common thing. Nowadays, it's usually smartwatches and such. But if I give you a simple exercise, right? If there's a clock around, okay, let me see. Let me open the chat window, and I'd love to see this happen. Yeah. So, do you guys have a wall clock nearby? Anyone? Okay, everyone has a wall clock. Could you quickly look at the wall clock and tell me what time it is? Okay. There's a 15-minute range or so, and thank you for reminding me of the time. So between Ankur and Trump and Server, you are in different time zones as well. So great. Good. Thank you so much for telling me the time. But now, without looking at the clock, tell me what was the figure or the marker where the 3 should have been? Was it without looking at the clock? Was it a digit? Was it a dot? Was it a dash? Was it Roman numerals? What was it? Without looking at the clock. What will have happened with a lot of people is you look at the time, but often in your own home car clock, you will not have realized what that dash is or what that thing is over there. Because you look for a certain thing, right? And your brain sees what it is looking for. Confirmation bias is that, right? What happens with confirmation bias is because we are thinking of a certain thing, we are looking for evidence that aligns with that. If we think TCS is a buy, I don't know why TCS got stuck in my head today, but now TCS is going to come throughout the day, right? But if we think TCS is a buy, we will keep looking for signs that suggest TCS is a buy. For all of you who have tried to buy a car in the recent past, if you decide on the model of a car, have you not, one of you was wrong also. But have you not noticed that if you decided to buy a model of a car, you will start seeing that car on the road all the time? Or for those of you who like to see patterns in numbers, you'll see some patterns all the time. That is a manifestation of confirmation bias. Your brain trying to look for signs of what you want to happen, right? So that's one more thing I think for us, for all of us as traders to keep in mind is this is a bias that we kind of feel right. That happens to us a lot. Hindsight bias is another one. It's kind of looking in the rearview mirror and thinking, "Ha, ye to hona hi tha." There is no such thing as hona hi tha. And yet, our brain is so used to it. This is a corollary to this is also, jo kuch hota hai, achhe ke liye hota hai. It is a nice way to console ourselves when anything happens in life. But I don't think that when we are taking a decision at any point in time, we can see on the right-hand side of the chart, right? Beyond the end of the chart, we do not know. And yet, once we reach a point further in the chart, we look back and say, "Ha, ye to hona hi tha." That bias of thinking that we knew it all along is called hindsight bias. And finally, the representative heuristic is kind of confusing correlation for causation. Confusing if you see an event happening somewhere, you think, like sometimes I hear a lot of traders say that there is a lot of correlation between, let's say, now I'm giving example, this is not an actual example, but say ONGC and ITC. And someone call themselves pair trader and say, "Itne time the correlation chala aa raha hai, yeah, I've noticed that over the past few days the prices have been moving together, so therefore something is happening." But just because two entities have had a certain amount of historical correlation, unless you dig deeper and are able to establish the reasons for that, there is a risk of you being trapped in the representativeness heuristic. The other one is just because two things are the same. Just because ONGC behaves in a certain way does not mean RIL will behave in the same way as well. So these are the kind of biases that we often tend to get trapped in, right? And this is kind of what I wanted to touch about. So
I think the example of ITC which you give is the best one for this in the current scenario.
In the current scenario, right now, ITC is so many things to so many people, and I think also ITC has brought so many people closer to God, right?
True. It's so popular on social media every day.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And just because it's happening in the media, often people start forming their opinions without applying their own mind and their own analysis to it. So that is what I'd like to think about. And so what I would like to ask all of you now on the call is, which of these have you seen in your behavior the most? If you don't want to admit it, it's perfectly understandable, but think through this. And what happens in our trading behavior over time is a combination of all of these. It's not that someone is always part of the herd, or someone always tends to anchor, or someone always is wrapped up in a story. But a lot of this happens to a lot of folks. So I'm very keen to understand it. Padman, you mentioned loss aversion. And it's very interesting. I would all, gone through all and still do it all the time, Dinesh, absolutely. We keep learning these lessons and we keep repeating these things. So here is where the piece I was talking about the brain itself, right, is what we need to think about. Loss aversion, the confirmation bias, that happens to all. A lot of people don't like to admit herd mentality, and please don't admit it right now. I'm not asking you, you have to bear all your emotions, because it is a difficult journey. But just knowing that we are likely to have this, seeing the pattern you want to see, that bias of confirmation, or see, I'm looking for this and therefore I will see it. We often force fit patterns. Head and shoulders exactly hai nahi, but agar ye aise dekhte, is angle se dekhte, to head and shoulders ho jata.
So even I would admit I have done this many a times earlier.
It is part of being human. Yes, that is why I always try to remind everyone. This is part of us being human. We are wired this way. We are wired for loss aversion. Because, 6 course buffet mile na mile, starvation nahi hona chahiye, is a very primal urge. As we've evolved as human beings, we have evolved because of survival of the fittest. We've learned to survive, and that instinct for survival causes us to ensure first that we look for the negative, and first that we look for what could go wrong, and protect ourselves from that, and then look for, okay, what can get better. But what's fascinating is that as humans, we forget that our journey is one of evolution, and our brain is equipped for that also, because over the centuries, as we have evolved, over the millennia as we have evolved, the brain has also evolved. And that is where I want to kind of just touch upon what can be done about this, right? So I hope I've been able to kind of shed some light on this thing. And Aditya, I'll come back to your question about risk as well. But the battle, I always see, is on two fronts. One is the internal battle, and the other is the external battle. The external battle depends on battlefields. If you are in the battlefields of the markets, you have to have a certain set of knowledge, and you have to be able to prepare for that in many ways. If it's, let's say, in the world of whatever, if you guys are not all full-time traders, there are some areas where you want to spend, whatever your work is, right? There is a knowledge battle that's external. There's a landscape battle. So if you are working within your organization and you want to chart your paths to growth, understanding your organization, understanding who are the right people to learn from, to network with, to engage with, that's important. Your subject matter knowledge, no matter what. Now, Vivek obviously is a past master in the world of quants, but he is also constantly looking out for ideas within the world of quantitative finance. What more can I bring into my models, into my algorithms, into my working? So that is all part of your knowledge base. Super, super important. I would argue easier to do also. The internal battle is slightly tougher to fight because of the wiring of the brain. Because, like I said earlier, each time we repeat a pattern over and over and over and over again, the brain, because it is an efficiency engine, it tries to strengthen the bonds between the neurons that make that pattern and that behavior easy. Think of it in your personal lives, in your own emotional lives. Why do some people always tend to be hot tempered? Some people always tend to be calm. Some people always tend towards a certain behavior, let's say greed. Some people always tend to fear. So this is something for us to really think about, right? Why are certain behaviors easier for us than others? Stage fright, or let's say any kind of so when in a confrontational situation, typically a certain pattern of behavior will repeat. When you are happy, a certain pattern of behavior repeats. And because this repeats, and this has come to us over it's a kind of mix of nature and nurture, how we are born, the circumstances we grew up in, the experiences that shaped us, all decide that. And it's funny, if you will, there's something we observed on the trading floor as well. That we used to call this a financial glass ceiling. Every trader has a certain band of profitability or sometimes loss, which they always come back to. They kind of mean revert to a certain band. So let's say if I wasn't the best trader on the floor. I was, let's say, a top quartile trader, but the bottom of the top quartile. I would, on average, make about during the bond future trading days about, let's say, 25,000 pounds a month. Indicative number, but suppose 25,000 pounds a month. In some months, I would, if say in the first 20 days of the month, I'm still at about 5 to 7,000 pounds, I would find ways, and somehow I would, towards the end of my month, on average, find my way to that 25,000 mark. What's funny is that in some months, if I reach 30, 35, 40,000, I would find some way to lose money and come back to this 25,000 mark. At the same time, there were other guys who were in this 80,000 mindset, some who were in the 5,000 mindset, some who consistently made losses and therefore did not last. Right? Yeah, vertigo. That's true. So this happens a lot as well to traders, and this happens because of these behavior patterns that have ingrained, and we decide our sense of self-worth. That is why a billionaire can lose all his money and then become a billionaire again. And at the same time, people, and there is a lot of research around this, people who win the lottery, most people end up right back where they were. Even if tomorrow, say, someone who has a monthly income of 70 to 80,000 bucks, or that number, wins a 5 crore lottery. Research suggests that there is an about 80% probability that that person will, over a 5 to 10 year horizon, come back to where they were, sometimes go even worse. The first person who won the 5 crore jackpot in Kaun Banega Crorepati, I forget his name, unfortunately. But there was a newspaper article about him that not only did he manage to lose all the money, but he's found himself in debt and a lot of stuff went wrong with him as well. Mindset. So coming back to the point of what do we do about these cognitive biases? Not Harshvardhan Nawade. Harshvardhan was the one who won the first 1 crore. This was another UPSC aspirant, S. Naam hai, I forget, who won the 5 crore wala final question. So the point is, what do we do about this, right?
Sushil Kumar was there, sir.
Sushil Kumar, that's right. It's a tragic story, but it's a story that reminds us again of, unless we change the way we view the world, the way we think, and by extension, the way our neurons are wired, changing behaviors becomes very, very difficult. This cannot be done outside, and this has to be inside out. And therefore, this has to come from a lot of introspection, right? So, but what I would definitely suggest to kind of on the call as a process, and this is something, like I said, we used to do in workshops as well, is one, observe. And this is probably the toughest because it's kind of part of the overconfidence bias and part of the self-serving bias. That whenever something goes well, we don't try to think of why it went right. But when something goes wrong, we try to blame other things. And that kind of perpetuates a pattern. So what I would always ask is, as difficult as it is, maybe you want to even print these little biases and stick it up on the wall in front of you and say, am I in this bias right now? Before entering a trade, so while making a decision, before entering a trade, after entering a trade, super, super important. As the markets are going in my favor, is a bias or is any kind of cognitive reaction naturally occurring? If a trade is going against me, this happens much faster. Is something happening even more? So the first step, I think, is just to think about it, just to be aware of it. And so I'm also, as part of my, I volunteer with another kind of group that that mentors young people. And one of my mentees right now, I'm working with her on something like this. And one of the activities that I make her do is to maintain a journal, to write every hour, what am I feeling right now? Bas itna hi. No judgments, not are ye feeling galat hai, ye feeling sahi hai. Just write a journal of, and this is, I guess, just the way you maintain a trade journal. In fact, as a trader, I would also recommend, especially to the younger traders here, when you maintain it, please firstly maintain a trade journal. There is no escaping that. But when you maintain a trade journal, enter why at the exit entry, write why at the entry, write why at the exit, irrespective of whether the exit was profit making or loss making. And then later you want to come back and look at it and see, okay, was my reasoning right at the time, or was it subject to some bias or the other? But this kind of introspection, if this becomes habit, your learning journey as a trader, and I would argue your learning journey as a human being, will become a lot better, a lot better, how do I put it? A lot smoother. Your journey towards being a better human.
I think trading journal is very, very important, like for all the people, especially the young ones.
So this is what I was talking about. This is the battle I mentioned on two fronts. The external battle, having a system, having a process, having a flow chart in your mind even before you enter a trade, right? And the internal battle. So the internal battle is super, super important. There is really no escaping that. The external battle, there are more solutions to. And I must say, this is not because I work with the CMT Association right now, but this is something I've learned over my time working with market participants. The rule-based structure that the CMT program kind of lends to you is a very interesting way of creating these rules in your mind. Having a certain process, one of the most profound sayings of all in the trading community is plan your trade and trade your plan. Plan your trade is an external factor. Trading your plan has an internal bias. So when you are entering a trade, no matter what process of analysis you use, knowing why you are entering the trade at that point in time, and knowing when you will exit, or at least what conditions need to be met when you exit, even as you enter the trade, you should know it. There is no such thing, to my mind at least, as enter here, dekh lenge. Then your P&L also will be dekh lenge, and that is always something to be a little mindful of. The ability to run with trends, the ability to get out of a trend that's working contrary to you, that is really the big learning, I think, of the body of knowledge. So when we talk of knowledge, what are the kind of knowledge bases that we are talking about, right? So here I will do a little company plug, but what is important to me is this body of knowledge, right? And I've just used the CMT body of knowledge as a reference because it covers a lot of these areas. And if you look at this, right, level 1, level 2, and level 3 all talk about behavioral finance at various increasingly important degrees. And by the time you come to level 3, it talks a lot about risk management, behavioral finance, volatility analysis within the space of risk management. So managing your risk is of paramount importance, and that only comes with rules, right? You learn a lot about charts, you learn a lot about trends and patterns, but there is always this disclaimer, as it were, right? That for all the analysis of past behaviors, all you get is a probability. There is never a guarantee that you will be right. In fact, a lot of you guys can kind of attest to this, that as a trader, even if you are right 50% of the time, you are better off if, and that's the question that George Soros answers, if when you make money, you make a lot of money, but when you lose money, you lose lesser money. So, if that is possible, then even with tossing coins, there's a certain let's say, balance of what you are able to win and what you aren't. Risk management, I think, is of absolute importance. And this is obviously the senior traders on the call know this, but for the younger traders, especially when you are younger and starting out, I would always say, make small bets, but make many bets. Keep doing this and keep journaling it. There is really no substitute to journaling, to recording not just where you entered and exited, but the why. Often people forget the why. And the why, not just when you lose, but equally important when you win. To see that you are not suddenly giving yourself too much credit for something that you should actually learn better. Just because a market event happened, and just because I happened on the day of the London blast to be out of most of my trades, I was not a trading genius. It just so happened that I was out, and the one leg that was that I had to get out of was running in my favor. Knowing that is very important. Knowing that the market does not behave because you want it to behave. The market is what it is. You mold yourself to understand how to best navigate the tides of the market, right? So these are some of the core lessons around risk management. To accept that you will make mistakes. There is no one who will not. Absolutely no one. Like George Soros says, do you get out early? Do you stay in at the right time? Is what will decide whether you will be profitable in the long run, right? So that's kind of it's very logical. The problem is we as human beings are not logical, and that is why this journey of constantly exploring ourselves, exploring what happens and what we think and how we are feeling. Honestly, how we are reacting emotionally is probably the best indicator of how we are doing as traders. The moment we are drivers and not passengers of our emotion, we will be in a position to be successful traders. Then even if the market goes against you 1,000 times, that one big bet. That's what I think Daniel Ocean said in the film Ocean's 11. Right? Because the house always wins. But then you get that one hand and then you take the house. Then I wanted to come with that kind of, because we touched upon the body of knowledge, a lot of young people ask me, and this hopefully will, Sumit, I clink my glass to you as well. Usually on nighttime Zoom calls, I usually have a glass with me, but today I don't because I do not want to slip into my own cognitive biases. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this as well, careers and technical analysis. The body of knowledge from the CMT perspective is quite vast, but a lot of people ask me this, what careers are available in the field of technical analysis? I often say that there is just one career in the field of technical analysis, that is the role of technical analyst. However, technical analysis is applicable to a lot of careers. And that is what I would urge. So for those of you who are full-time traders, of course, that's a place where technical analysis is incredibly applicable. But also, where else could one possibly work? It is not just in an advisory firm or not just in a broking house. You could be working for a bank treasury, corporate treasury, various kinds of asset managers, retail, institutional. There's a lot of space. And of course, entrepreneurs. There are a lot of entrepreneurs on this call as well. And so, you can set up a conventional business with classical technical analysis or the modern day kind of interpretations of the rule-based structures of technical analysis in the world of algo and quant trading. For asset classes, all of them, as long as they are liquid and traded. And what kind of roles are that one line slipped over to the other? And various kinds of roles, whether you're a research analyst, a hedge fund manager. For the more technically or technologically inclined of you, there are also careers in being a systems architect, a systems developer. That's also something that's available to a lot of people. Eventually, yes, like you said, after you've learned enough lessons, I would say a trainer, a teacher, because it's always good to open up your wounds and show to other people in the hope that they will not repeat your mistakes. But then they will always go and repeat it. And then you will laugh at them. And then they will say, you are right. And then we will all go and repeat the same mistakes again. And eventually some of us will learn. But it is still a very rewarding journey to take with anyone, to teach, etc. So that kind of brings me to the end of that. Of course, a bit about the CMT program. Most of you know about it. If you don't, by all means, please feel free to go to the website and take a look at that. What I would like to invite everyone for is the India Summit. We are super, super excited about the speaker lineup. We've been working very hard to put together sessions that will be interesting for everyone. So whether you are the systematic guy, who would like to learn from quants who are using ML and AI in the world of technical analysis, to the discretionary folks who want to say elitations. There are a lot of elitations in India, so that's something that we find interesting. We have a panel of buy-side folks. We have a panel on academics and about teaching and learning as well. We also have an interesting fireside chat on outsourcing career opportunities to India from overseas for technical analysts. So that's another interesting conversation I want to have. One photograph that you cannot see on this slide because it was made before we got the conversation is our very own Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. Will also be a speaker at the summit. So that's my invitation to all of you. Please visit the site, take a look, register. A lot of our volunteer leaders have been assigned some discount codes, so you can find them and get those from them as well. But
absolutely, I would request everyone to please join the summit. It's a great opportunity to learn as well as listen to some great speakers who will be sharing some great experiences, I think.
Yeah, that's it's on the CMT Association website, so please do hop along to the website and take a look. If you need anything, feel free to reach out to me as well. And with that, thank you so much for your time on a Sunday night at 10:15. Open to questions.
Great, great. So, sir, before we head to questions, I think, sir, you can close your screen and we can have a chat, and definitely we'll then head to a question.
Excellent. There we are.
So first of all, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I think it was really amazing the way you presented it, from starting to the biases to the quotes which you told and the examples which you gave. It was amazing, and you spoke one way without even drinking a bottle of water. It was amazing. So thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. It was amazing presentation. I think everyone enjoyed a lot. It was a lot of learning, which is actually practical. It was actually very much insightful and very much important for us, because we all know that things, but there's no one to tell us how this happens, and this is something which is called at this, and this is how you can improve, like the trading journal part, writing out why, which is very, very important, like that why you made us exits and entry, because usually we just write what we bought and what we sold at. That's available with our broker as well. But why we don't write, and that is the most important thing. So sir, thank you so much for giving your great time.
Thank you so much.
Selflessly, and for enlisting a lot of young traders who are listening to us, who are there with us on Zoom. So now we are open up to questions. You can ask your questions one by one, and I'll also help you with the Facebook questions, because I think there are a lot of questions coming over there.
Oh, I'm glad. Nice to know.
Great. So sir, there's one question. I think you can see it on the chat box. Also,
practical exercises to overcome cognitive biases. Any books and courses? There are a few interesting courses. There is one called, I think, The Science of Happiness. Let me do this. Yash, I'll send you a list of books, etc. that I recommend. But one that I definitely recommend is Thinking Fast and Slow by Dan Kahneman. Right. Okay. A very nice book on our instinctive reactions, how we think fast, and our deliberate reactions, thinking slow, and how finding a balance between the two is what will help our evolution as human beings.
Okay, sir. I think, yeah. So actually, one of our attendees have messaged me personally that I forgot to ask that. So that our tagline, that market kya lagta hai, because before we move out to questions, that is one very important thing we ask everyone, and no one can escape from that question. So like, of course, not a particular target or stop loss or something, like just a common view. What do you think about the markets right now?
Market kya lagta hai?
Yeah, market kya lagta hai? That's a question which everyone asks.
Market bahut acha lagta hai. I mean, see, to my mind, there is a reason I don't have a call on the markets. I am very reactionary in that sense. I only react to the signals that we are seeing in the markets and apply risk management on top of that. मुझे कुछ नहीं लगता सच में, because I don't understand the levels the markets are at right now. I do not understand them. I do not understand why they are. My wife, incidentally, is the head of HR for a hospitality company. And what she's been doing over the past 6 months is just letting go of people. Now, my concern is that this is happening not just within hospitality, but a lot of industries where the economic impact of the crisis right now is is going to be felt for, I think, a few years to come. But at the same time, the markets don't seem to be understanding that at all. The markets are hitting all-time highs. They're whipsawing left, right, and center. So सच में कुछ नहीं लगता है और बहुत अच्छा लगता है. There is, I really cannot offer a comment at this time to where the markets will head or where I see a target. I am very reactionary right now. If I see a trend developing with a few validations across various instruments, I'm happy to enter the markets. If I see the trend wearing out, I'm happy to exit the markets. If my notions go against me, I get out as soon as my stop is hit, and that is really the aim. So that's something, as I said, very reactionary. So I don't have a forward view on the market at all.
Great. I think so. Of course, that was a great answer, but of course, no one knows because the time is so topsy turvy. Like we don't know the future how it would be after the COVID times.
Yeah, so I'm afraid. I'm afraid, to be honest, because the market does not seem to speak to economic realities right now. You know,
absolutely. I totally agree.
We've always believed that the market prices everything in, but if the market prices everything in, what does the market think about the current economic realities? About not notional ideas of the market, but what is happening on the ground? And when will that in time manifest in the markets? We don't know. Or will, like the past decade, the past 12 years we've seen, will the government keep throwing money and pumping the markets up? Where the same money could go to the real economy. I mean, in all fairness, I love the financial markets, but the financial market is an enabler for the real markets. And right now they have decoupled completely. So, on that cautionary note.
True. So, sir, there's one interesting question on Facebook. Someone has written that, I don't remember the name, but it was a very, very interesting question that how do we control our emotions and psychology during a live trade when we are suffering losses? So cutting that loss is a very, very important thing.
And of course, very important and very difficult.
Yeah, so it's very difficult. So I think he has asked that how I am not able to cut my losses on time. So how I can do that? So that's the question we want to ask.
It's a good question. And it's a question that I guess all young traders learn the hard way. The first step I would say is to enter the trade with 2 exits in mind. You have to have a take, and a take profit can be a trailing stop loss. So you have a set of conditions, but you have to have a stop loss. If you enter a trade without a stop loss, you've done something wrong there itself, right? So that is definitely something I would ask any trader. When you enter a trade, have a stop loss. You have to know your risk reward at that time itself, right? And then of course, having a specific take profit or having a trailing stop loss that ensures that your take profit constantly is adjusting to the trend of the market, by all means do that, right? So that's one thing. Secondly, and this kind of comes back to Padman's question as well, what practical exercises can we undertake to train our brains to overcome our cognitive biases? The first step is awareness. And this comes back to trade journaling and writing why. Maybe a second step to just writing why you enter a trade and why you exit a trade. Exactly what is to give it more clarity. What were you feeling at the time? So when you exited the trade, when you entered the trade, what were you feeling? Were you excited? Were you unsure? Were you was your analysis in place? And so there is the intellectual side of or the external side, like I say, of the markets, where say you saw a certain set of patterns forming. You got a piece of news. You felt that the company fundamentals justified a certain decision. So you entered based on those external circumstances. As you entered, what were you feeling at the same time? Were you sure of your decision? Were you feeling confident, happy, etc.? Were you feeling unsure? Were you feeling uncertain? Journaling that is very important. As you go through the trade and as you watch the trade, maybe when you are young, there is value, as I said, in just sticking up the various cognitive biases and thinking through this. Am I getting trapped by any of these biases? Are these happening to me? The very act of paying attention often is a very nice way to start weakening the linkages between the neurons. This also, I mean, this kind of, maybe it's a little meta right now, but getting into, so emotions, right? We often are victim to, especially when a trade is going against us, and we see it kind of rushing against us. We go from, okay, this is going outside my comfort area. If you have a stop loss and it has crossed that, then it is a discipline issue. You have to get out. There is another cognitive bias called the sunk cost trap. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of these biases. So the sunk cost trap says this: क्योंकि मैंने invest किया है, I've spent this money, and so I will continue taking a hit and continue taking losses. One of my first mentors and my first boss in trading used to say, don't get married to your trade. आजकल तो marriage का भी कोई है, don't get married to your spouse also is kind of a factor. But by all means, remember that you've entered a trade to exit it. And if you have to exit it at a loss, when it hits your stop loss, get out. You might see a number of times that it hits your stop level and then goes back. This is such a common story, right? You exited a trade, took a loss, and suddenly it went back in your favor. Oh yeah, I was telling you about my big story. Around 2000, this is middle of 2006, was it? 6, 7. When the rate hike cycle ended, I had at that time discovered, and I thought I invented this behavior called dollar cost averaging. All the senior folks on this call will be laughing at me right now, but I was like, dollar cost averaging correct. So I entered a trade with, say, one position. It went against me. When it went a certain amount that I thought was my stop, instead of getting out, I entered with 2 more. So average ho jayega. And then it just has to come back a third more. It went further against. I entered with 4, further against 8, further against 16. At one point in time, so it was covered exposure, but each leg was about 3.2 billion pounds. Of course, covered tha, to isliye margins were relatively smaller. But that month, I lost 125,000 pounds.
That's a huge number.
And I was not able to. So that's the thing, you learn these. And the further it goes, like Amit mentions, a fear psychosis. You lose a few times, you start getting more and more afraid. Then you are not able to enter. At this time as well, it's so important to pay attention to what you are feeling at the time, right? And to ask yourself once again, am I falling victim to any of these biases? Is this playing out? Because just the act of watching yourself will start to weaken neurons. And then as it becomes, one khoka suno. Aur bada dard hua tha. And so I really think that everybody should, and this is yoga talks about this, right? The best way to get better as a human being, like you said, Yash, in the beginning, is to watch yourself. To watch yourself constantly, so that over time, like I mentioned earlier, you are not a passenger to your emotions. You know when an emotion is rising, and you know what to do to act in sync with that or against that emotion also. So even if you take a hit 5 times, 10 times, 100 times, if you've taken a hit for the right reasons, that your risk reward ratio was in place. When you entered, you knew what you were doing, and yet the trade went against you. If it happens 10 times in a row, I would say that is lesser of a crime or lesser of a problem than you entered one trade and it went against you and you just froze. Because when you freeze, automatically your losses will run with you. It is very rare that the market has ever told someone, ki, "Ha, beta, you have waited for long enough, and therefore I will give you back all your money and give you more." What's funny is people ride the losses down crazy amounts, right? You will ride it to sale. If you ride it down, let's say 8 units of price, and it comes back also in your favor, you will not wait for it to go 8 units up again and say, "Ha, 8 unit ka mera loss tha, to main 8 unit ka profit bananga." You, as soon as it comes back, I'll say, "Oh, मैंने अपना square off कर दिया position and I made no loss." And that is another very expensive lesson to learn, because the market does not often come back just because you want it to come back. Right? So yeah, fun story.
I think one question which is there on Facebook, as well as Mr. Trump is asking us, that there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time that the news keeps a lot of emotions on us, or maybe controls our emotions. That some news comes, maybe it's like India, China, or something like something happening in US, China, or maybe something in US. There's some stimulus package, and that drives our emotions, and then we square off our trade. Like many times, I think someone has given an example also that he was short on the market, but due to some news of stimulus package, he exited and something like that. And his technical view was right, but due to news, he exited, and then he was crying on that. So how to get out of that?
I see, and this kind of comes back to that whole idea of being the driver of emotions and not the passenger, right? And it's unfortunate that the success of news media is built on TRPs and not on accuracy. And therefore, and because of our natural bias towards negativity, the more negative news that is pumped out, the likelier people are to watch that news. It is a human reaction. It's not something that we should feel, we should feel careful about, but not bad about. It's a human reaction. But knowing that and being aware of that because this news and negative news, positive news has been happening since time immemorial. All of that news and all of the data comes together and eventually expresses itself in the price. So I would argue, watch the price and react to the price. On red days and on green days, and I'm not saying anything about which days, but that is the beauty of the markets. There is a space for bulls and there is a space for bears, and as long as the two of them are engaging with each other, in between we'll all make our money.
Great.
As long as we are drivers and not passengers.
Absolutely. So I think there are a lot more questions, but we have shortage of time.
We have to be respectful of time. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for a wonderful presentation, for answering the questions so patiently, and for giving some great insights on psychology and emotional control and how we should go through it and how we can improve that. That is the most important thing. Identifying the problem is one thing, but improving that is another thing, and which is very, very important, I feel. And I'm amazed, like still on a Sunday night at 10:30, we have more than 40 people on Zoom, and we have more than 40 people on Facebook. So that shows that people are willing to learn, people are willing to take knowledge, and the way you have expressed it, I think that's amazing. So sir, some closing remarks before we end.
I don't know what is left to say that I haven't already said, but thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate. Clearly, all of you have family life issues as well, because what are you doing right now at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night? But see, that's the beauty of it. As human beings, we are driven to learn, and the fact that you are here on a Sunday night, the fact that Yash has been able to identify this need and this hunger, gives us hope. So Yash, thank you so much to you and your team for putting this together. I am in fact in awe of your skill at even managing spotlights on Zoom calls.
That has become like a regular thing.
But it's brilliant. The fact that you're creating such properties and putting stuff like this out there for market participants to engage with, this can only help us get better. And so once again, to everyone on the call, thank you so much for taking out time. I've had a great time because if you've not noticed it, I enjoy chatting about my failures and my pains and my war wounds, and I feel like I've gone through a counseling session for free. So thank you so much for being patient with me. Yes, a wonderful, wonderful initiative. So all the best to you and all the best to everyone. I hope to see all of you at the summit. Final free plug. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think someone has written that a lot of people who are watching IPL must have missed something big. So of course, yeah,
I think cheated now.
Because a lot of people told me, well, like, IPL is starting and you should change the time or something. But I told I am total believer of people who want to seek knowledge, and they have proved me right, because we had more than 100 people on Zoom as well, and on Facebook.
Wonderful.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in on Sunday night. We'll keep on bringing speakers like Joel, sir, who have shared their journey such in an explicit way. He has shared his failures, his success stories, his learnings, the way he's explained trading psychology and everything. I think that's a great learning, and we'll keep bringing such speakers on our platform so that you learn and you don't have to depend on anyone else for taking your trading or investing decisions, and you can become your own advisor and become a more wise trader as well as investor. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I hope everyone stays safe and stays at home. We'll definitely upload this video also on our YouTube channel soon. So keep learning from our YouTube channel, because we upload all kinds of videos like these so that you learn from them. And we want everyone to become self-dependent traders and investors in India. and become educated, which is very important. So thank you so much for joining. We'll have another speaker next week, Sunday at 9 p.m. We'll be speaking some great insights once again, like Joel sir. Thank you so much, Joel sir, once again for such a beautiful presentation. And I hope everyone stays safe, stays at home. Good night, everyone. Stay safe and see you all next week at 9 o'clock. Signing off, Yash.
Thank you.
Thank you.